Sego. Today we're going to be looking at a traditional Iroquoian quiver. This one is made from birch bark. It's sewn together with leather cords. Historically, these would be made from a single piece of birch bark, but I didn't have a large enough piece, so I had to sew two together. It's a little bit crude as I haven't worked with birch bark before, but it turned out all right. At the base of the quiver there's a moosehide cap. Inside of the moosehide cap there are two pieces of birch bark with the grain running perpendicular. This prevents arrows from poking through the bottom. The mouth of the quiver is reinforced with a moosehide band. A moosehide strap is sewn to both of these leather reinforcements. This style of quiver is designed to be worn over the shoulder. We can see something similar in Champlain's illustrations. One question I've had in relation to my armor is how do you wear a quiver? If I try to wear it ordinarily, it pinches between the armor and my body. If I put it on the outside of the armor, the back shield prevents me from reaching the arrows. Short of sewing the quiver directly into the armor, the best technique I've found is to simply loop the quiver over the left elbow. It's a little bit more awkward than a normal quiver position, but the alternative is that it's sewn to the armor and impedes your movement. In this position, if I was surprised, I could simply drop the quiver and bow simultaneously and not have to worry about them. This technique makes sense to me. So there you have it, a traditional birch bark quiver. But I'm not done yet. I want to talk a little bit about the pros and cons of a back quiver as compared to a hip quiver. First up, we have a speed test. For this test, I filmed myself shooting 20 arrows from each quiver, and then averaged out the results. So to not waste your time, I'm only going to show you 5 shots of each. In the interest of full disclosure, I've been shooting with this quiver since spring, whereas the hip quiver I've been using for the better part of 8 years, excepting the last 6 months. I've encountered a lot of snobbery in the archery community regarding quivers. Talk about that in a bit. Let's move on to the hip quiver now. People tend to get the idea that their preference negates all other options. A lot of straw man arguments. This is particularly bad among the amateur historians. The old problem of overcorrection. People get the idea that, oh, medieval archers never used back quivers, therefore they must be hot garbage. You know, I could just as easily say that Iroquoians never used hip quivers, therefore hip quivers must be hot garbage. Something being different doesn't mean it's worse. Oftentimes it just comes down to preference. That's it for the test. Let's collate the results. So here's my statistics. I threw out the shots where I fumbled the arrow or where I misjudged which flight was correct. The average speed for the back quiver was 6.7 seconds a shot, whereas for the hip quiver it was 6.8 seconds per shot. So that's like a 1 or 2% difference in speed, which I don't think is important. Another charge that's leveled against back quivers is that they get caught on branches when you walk through the brush. I did not find this to be the case. I think this might be a result of poorly designed modern quivers. On mine, the arrows only just poke out above my shoulder, so my body prevents them from catching on things. Another thing people say is that they will spill out when you run. This is simply not possible with a properly designed quiver. Again, I think this idea comes from poorly designed modern ones that only cover half the length of the arrow. The only issue I found here is that it's a little bit annoying how it bounces against your back, but that's minor. Another thing I've heard people say is that the arrows will spill out if you bend over, crawl, or crouch. This is simply not true. You do need to make sure that the quiver is angled correctly, but because the strap is close to your hands when you're crawling, this is easy to do. When you're doing a belly crawl, you need to grip the strap across your chest and hold it tight, otherwise the quiver will fall off the shoulder, but this is a minor inconvenience. The bow is much more inconvenient. The hip quiver, on the other hand, I found very inconvenient for keeping low. The arrows want to spill out and they want to catch in the ground. You can mitigate this by centering the quiver on the back, but because the waist is so far from the hands, it's difficult to keep it from slipping. Scooting along with the hip quiver like this is perfectly fine, no real inconvenience. Scooting on this side is no good though, the tail of the quiver catches on the ground. I want to put forward my own comparison that I haven't seen anybody else do before. That being, how much does the quiver impede your ability to fight hand to hand? I've only fought with longsword once, and that was 10 years ago, so forgive me if I swing this like a felling axe. While we're on that subject, this dead branch is annoying me. Trying out some big motions to see if I can catch the quiver or the arrows. There's literally no way that I could hit the quiver or the arrows, though it is a little bit annoying how they bounce as I move. How about with a one-handed weapon and a shield? When I move my arms back, the quiver moves with me. There's no way that I can hit it. Except maybe the tail of the shield against the back of the quiver, but this doesn't come up in normal combat. Now onto the hip quiver. If you move it way the heck back, it doesn't get in the way much, but it's much more difficult to draw from there. So I'm going to be testing with it in the position I normally have it for shooting. Bear in mind that this is a lot further back than a lot of people like it. A lot of people have it to the side or even to the front. Whenever I move my sword back, I knock my elbow against it. This is annoying, but nothing too bad. Here I jammed the corner of my elbow into the nocks of the arrows. I was glad I wasn't going at quite full speed. Let's see about with the one-handed weapon. It's much worse with the axe than it is with the longsword. With the axe you tend to be in a more backwards position, and as such if you do a lower angle of attack you're going to catch on the arrows. This test means nothing except that a forward-facing hip quiver is unsuitable for hand-to-hand combat. So all in all, there's no major difference between back quivers and side quivers, it's just what you find convenient. I'm willing to bet that naysayers of either type haven't tried a well-designed example. Anyway, I've had enough of talking for now, so thank you for watching. I hope you found this interesting. Bye-bye.